World War II was the largest and deadliest conflict in human history, involving over 100 million people from more than 30 countries. It lasted from 1939 to 1945, reshaping borders, governments, and societies across the globe. This was a total war. Cities were bombed, civilians targeted, and entire economies mobilized for victory. New technologies like powerful aircraft and the atomic bomb brought both innovation and unprecedented destruction. The war saw both acts of heroism and unimaginable cruelty, testing the limits of human endurance. When the fighting ended, the world order had changed. Europe's old powers were weakened, and the United States and Soviet Union emerged as superpowers. In this video, we'll break down why the war started, the major events and battles, and the lasting consequences that still shape our world. Understanding World War II is key to understanding the modern age. To truly understand the origins of World War II, we must first look back to the aftermath of World War I, a conflict that left Europe shattered, both physically and emotionally. The devastation was immense, with entire cities in ruins and millions mourning the loss of loved ones. The war's end brought hope for peace, but also deep scars that would not heal easily. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, placed harsh penalties on Germany: blame, reparations, lost territory, and a crippled military. Many Germans saw the treaty as a humiliation, a punishment that went far beyond what was fair. The treaty's terms not only weakened Germany's economy, but also its sense of national pride and stability. This created deep resentment and economic hardship in Germany, fueling anger and a desire for revenge. The German people struggled with hyperinflation, unemployment, and political chaos. Many felt betrayed by their leaders and the international community, creating fertile ground for radical ideas to take root. The Great Depression of the 1930s made things even worse, spreading poverty and instability across Europe. Businesses closed, families lost their homes, and hunger became widespread. The economic crisis was not limited to Germany. It affected nearly every country, shaking people's faith in democracy and traditional governments. In this climate of fear and uncertainty, extremist leaders rose to power: Hitler in Germany, Mussolini in Italy, and militarists in Japan. They promised strong leadership, quick solutions, and a return to national greatness, appealing to people desperate for change. These leaders promised to restore national pride and expand their country's power, forming the Axis alliance. Their aggressive ambitions and shared goals brought them together, setting the stage for a dangerous partnership. They built up their militaries, defied international agreements, and began to openly challenge the fragile peace that remained in Europe and Asia. Britain and France, desperate to avoid another catastrophic war, tried appeasement, giving in to some demands in hopes of preserving peace. They believed compromise might prevent another disaster, but their efforts only delayed the inevitable. Appeasement only emboldened the dictators, encouraging further aggression and expansion. The world watched as borders were redrawn and freedoms were lost, setting the stage for a new and even more devastating conflict. By 1939, the world was on the brink of another global war, one that would prove even more destructive than the last. Appeasement failed. The hope that giving in to Hitler's demands would prevent another devastating war quickly faded. European leaders, desperate to avoid conflict, had underestimated the ambitions of Nazi Germany. Hitler, after annexing Austria and parts of Czechoslovakia, demanded territory from Poland. His aggressive expansionism sent shockwaves across the continent, as it became clear that his ambitions would not be satisfied by diplomacy alone. Britain and France promised to defend Poland, but Hitler invaded anyway on September 1, 1939, using Blitzkrieg, fast, overwhelming attacks. German tanks, planes, and troops swept across the Polish countryside, leaving destruction in their wake and forcing thousands of civilians to flee their homes. The Soviet Union invaded Poland from the east just weeks later, sealing the country's fate. Caught between two powerful armies, Poland was quickly defeated and divided, its people left to face occupation and hardship. Britain and France declared war on Germany, marking the official start of World War II in Europe. Across the continent, people listened anxiously to radio broadcasts, realizing that a new era of conflict had begun. For months, little fighting occurred on the Western Front, a period called the Phony War. Soldiers waited in trenches and behind fortifications while civilians braced for the unknown, uncertain when or where the next attack would come. In spring 1940, Germany struck again, conquering Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, and France with shocking speed. The world watched in disbelief as country after country fell to the relentless German advance. The British and French armies were trapped at Dunkirk, but a daring evacuation saved over 300,000 soldiers. Civilians joined the rescue using fishing boats and ferries to bring troops home under constant threat from enemy aircraft. By June, France had fallen, and German troops marched into Paris. The city, once a symbol of freedom and culture, now stood under Nazi occupation. Hitler's forces seemed unstoppable, and Europe braced for what would come next. Millions became refugees, and the world watched as the map of Europe was redrawn by force. The world was now fully at war. Alliances were tested, and nations everywhere prepared for a conflict that would touch every corner of the globe. The stage was set for a global conflict that would reshape history and change the fate of nations for generations to come. With France defeated, Britain stood alone against Nazi Germany. Hitler planned to invade, but first needed to destroy the Royal Air Force, RAF. The Battle of Britain began in July 1940, a fierce air campaign over southern England. Outnumbered RAF pilots, including many from other countries, fought relentlessly against the Luftwaffe. German bombers targeted airfields, factories, and eventually cities in the Blitz, hoping to break British morale. Despite heavy bombing, the British spirit held firm, and the RAF recovered and resisted. By September, Germany had failed to gain air superiority. The invasion was postponed indefinitely, Hitler's first major defeat. The courage of the few RAF pilots inspired the world and proved the Nazis could be stopped. The Battle of Britain was a turning point, giving hope to occupied Europe. Britain's survival kept the fight against tyranny alive. As Britain fought on, the war expanded into a global conflict, drawing in nations from every corner of the world. What began as a European struggle soon engulfed Africa, Asia, and the Pacific, as alliances shifted and new fronts opened. In June 1941, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest military invasion in history, sending millions of German troops across the Soviet border. The world watched as the Nazi war machine rolled eastward, aiming to crush the Soviet Union in a matter of months. The Germans advanced rapidly at first, capturing vast territories, but the sheer size of the Soviet Union, combined with fierce resistance and the onset of a brutal winter, brought their progress to a grinding halt. Frozen equipment and exhausted soldiers marked the beginning of a long, costly campaign. The Eastern Front became a relentless, bloody struggle. Both sides suffered staggering losses, and the fighting drained German resources and morale, turning the tide of the war. Meanwhile, in Asia, Japan sought to dominate the region, expanding its empire and clashing with Western powers over vital resources like oil and rubber. Tensions with the United States grew ever more intense. On December 7, 1941, Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, devastating the U.S. Pacific Fleet and shocking the world. The attack marked a turning point, as the United States could no longer remain neutral. The very next day, America declared war on Japan. In response, Germany and Italy declared war on the United States, officially bringing the world's largest industrial power into the conflict. The conflict was now truly global, with the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan, facing off against the Allies, Britain, the Soviet Union, the United States, and their partners. The fate of nations hung in the balance. The entry of American industrial and military power would prove decisive, as factories across the U.S. shifted to wartime production and millions of troops prepared to join the fight overseas. The world was now locked in a struggle on every continent, with battles raging from the deserts of North Africa to the jungles of Southeast Asia, and from the Atlantic to the Pacific. The stakes had never been higher, as the fate of millions and the future of the world hung in the balance. By 1942, the tide began to turn against the Axis. In North Africa, the British won a crucial victory at El Alamein, halting Axis advances. Allied landings in North Africa trapped Axis forces, leading to their surrender. On the Eastern Front, the Battle of Stalingrad became a brutal turning point. Soviet forces surrounded and defeated the German Sixth Army. In the Pacific, the U.S. Navy's victory at Midway crippled Japan's fleet and shifted the balance. The Allies began island hopping, capturing key positions on the way to Japan. The biggest Allied operation came on D-Day, June 6, 1944. when over 150,000 troops landed in Normandy. The successful invasion opened a second front in Europe, forcing Germany to fight on two sides. These victories marked the beginning of the end for the Axis. The Allies were now on the offensive everywhere. After D-Day, Allied forces liberated France and pushed into Germany from the west, while the Soviets advanced from the east. Germany launched a final counterattack at the Battle of the Bulge, but it failed. By spring 1945, Allied and Soviet troops entered Germany. Berlin fell after fierce fighting, Hitler committed suicide, and Germany surrendered on May 7, 1945, VE Day. In the Pacific, the US faced fierce resistance as it closed in on Japan. To avoid a costly invasion, President Truman authorized the use of atomic bombs. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were devastated in August 1945, forcing Japan's surrender. On August 15, 1945, World War II officially ended, VJ Day. The world celebrated, but the cost was staggering. The war had changed everything. The aftermath of World War II was devastating, up to 85 million dead, many of them civilians. The Holocaust revealed the horrors of genocide, with 6 million Jews and millions of others murdered by the Nazis. The world was shocked by the scale of destruction and cruelty. In response, the United Nations was founded in 1945 to promote peace and prevent future conflicts. The war weakened old empires, sparking decolonization and the birth of new nations in Africa and Asia. Two superpowers emerged: the United States and the Soviet Union, whose rivalry would define the Cold War era. The war's legacy included new international laws on human rights and the concept of crimes against humanity. The scars, physical, emotional, and political, would last for generations. The world had to rebuild, but it would never be the same. The lessons of World War II continue to shape our world today. World War II fundamentally reshaped the world. European empires faded and the US and Soviet Union became global superpowers. The political map was redrawn and new nations emerged from the ruins. The war accelerated technological change and set the stage for the social and political movements of the modern era. The United Nations symbolized a new hope for peace and cooperation. The horrors of the Holocaust led to new human rights laws and a global commitment to never again. The nuclear age began, casting a long shadow over the future. The war's memory lives on in national identities, memorials, and the stories we tell. By studying World War II, we understand the forces that shaped our present and the dangers of forgetting the past. Its echoes still shape our world.